Hello, and welcome back to True Scam Stories. We all dream of the golden ticket. The sudden stroke of luck that changes everything. A winning lottery number found in an old coat pocket. A dusty painting in the attic that turns out to be a masterpiece. Or, perhaps, a mysterious letter from a lawyer, telling us that we are the sole heir to a fortune left by a relative we never knew. It is a fantasy straight out of a Charles Dickens novel. And that is exactly why it is the most enduring con game in human history. You might know it as the Nigerian Prince email. But that is just a clumsy caricature. The real professionals don't act like royalty, they act like lawyers. They act like bankers. And they don't target the greedy, they target the hopeful. Today, we tell the story of Robert, a retired engineer who received an email that seemed to answer all his prayers about his retirement. It was a formal notification from a law firm in London regarding the estate of a wealthy man who shared his last name. Robert thought he was inheriting a legacy. In reality, he was stepping into a trap that was invented in the 1890s, a trap known as the Spanish prisoner. This is the story of the legacy trap. Robert was a man of facts. At 68, he had spent his life building bridges and analyzing structural integrity. He was not a man prone to flights of fancy. But retirement had been harder than he expected. Inflation was eating into his pension, and he worried constantly about leaving something behind for his grandchildren. One Tuesday morning, he opened his iPad to check his emails. Amidst the newsletters and spam, one subject line stood out because of its formality. Subject, re. The estate of late Mr. Arthur Miller, next of kin inquiry. Robert's last name was Miller. He paused. He clicked. The email was on the letterhead of Sterling & Associates, barristers at law, based in London. It was written in impeccable, legal English. Dear Mr. Robert Miller, I am Charles Sterling, the personal attorney to the late Mr. Arthur Miller, a wealthy oil contractor who sadly passed away in a car accident in 2019, along with his immediate family. Before his death, he deposited the sum of $8.5 million US with a private bank here in London. Robert read on, his skepticism warring with his curiosity. The lawyer explained that under British law, if no next of kin was found within 3 years, the money would be confiscated by the government treasury. I have spent months searching for a relative, the lawyer wrote. You bear the same surname. While I cannot be 100% certain you are directly related, your profile is the closest match. I propose a partnership. I can present you to the bank as the next of kin. We will split the fortune 50/50ths. It is perfectly legal, but we must act fast. Robert put the iPad down. It sounded crazy. But Miller was not an incredibly common name. And he did have ancestors who came from England. Could it be? He decided to test it. He replied, I need proof. Send me the documents. Within an hour, Barrister Sterling replied. Attached were high-resolution scans, a death certificate for Arthur Miller, a copy of a bank deposit slip for $8.5 million, and a copy of Sterling's own law license and passport. They looked flawlessly real. The seals, the stamps, the signatures. Robert's structural engineer brain looked for cracks, but he found none. The visual evidence was overwhelming. He agreed to proceed. He wasn't doing it for a Ferrari. He was doing it to pay for his grandson's college. For the next 2 weeks, Robert and Sterling were in constant communication. Sterling was polite, professional, and incredibly detailed. He sent Robert legal forms to sign. He explained the British probate process. He groomed Robert into feeling like a partner in a high-stakes legal maneuver. Then came the obstacle. Robert, Sterling wrote, the bank has approved the transfer application. However, because the funds have been dormant for so long, the High Court requires a certificate of legitimacy to unfreeze the assets. I have paid for the legal filing myself, but the court fee of $4,200 must be paid by the beneficiary, that is you, for $1,200. It was a lot of money. But compared to $4.25 million, his half of the inheritance? It was pennies. This is the advance fee mechanism. The scammer makes the victim focus on the massive reward at the end, making the upfront cost seem trivial by comparison. It's a mathematical trick on the brain. Robert went to his bank. He wired the $4,200 to an account in London. He felt a nervous flutter, but Sterling confirmed receipt immediately and sent an official-looking receipt from the High Court. 3 days later, another email. Bad news. Partner. The anti-money laundering agency has flagged the transfer because it is such a large sum crossing international borders. Robert felt cold. $12,500? That was a significant chunk of his savings. He emailed Sterling, angry. "You didn't tell me about this." Sterling called him. His voice was calm, British, soothing. "Robert, I am as frustrated as you are. I have invested months of work into this. We are at the finish line. Do not let the government steal this legacy from your family over a bureaucratic hurdle. I would pay it myself, but my assets are tied up in the audit. I need you to step up." The sunk cost fallacy kicked in. Robert had already spent $4,200. If he walked away now, he lost that money forever. If he paid the $12,500, he saved the first payment and got the millions. He liquidated a small investment account. He wired the $12,500. He waited 24 hours. No money. He waited 48 hours. Then, the final blow. An email, supposedly from the Bank of England, forwarded by Sterling. Transfer halted. Inheritance tax of $45,000 required before release. Robert sat in his office, the glow of the screen illuminating a face drained of color. He finally saw the pattern. There would always be another fee. There would always be another document. The finish line was a mirage that moved further away every time he took a step. He called his son, a lawyer. He sent him the documents. His son called back in 10 minutes. "Dad, Google the text of the first email." Robert did. He pasted. Before his death, he deposited the sum of $8.5 million. Thousands of results appeared. The same script. The same wording. Sometimes the name was Arthur Miller, sometimes David Smith, sometimes Michael Brown. There was no inheritance. There was no Barrister Sterling. There was no Arthur Miller. Robert had sent nearly $17,000 to a criminal syndicate that had likely sent that same email to 1 million people that Tuesday, just waiting for one structural engineer to write back. Robert fell for a scam that is actually older than the telephone. In the 19th century, it was called the Spanish prisoner con. Here is the secret history and anatomy of this fraud. The history: in the 1890s, scammers sent letters to wealthy Americans claiming to be a disgraced aristocrat imprisoned in Spain. They claimed they had a hidden treasure, but they needed money to bribe the guards and smuggle themselves, and the treasure map, out. If the victim sent the bribe money, the prisoner would promise to share the treasure. Change Spanish prisoner to Nigerian prince or London lawyer, and change treasure to inheritance, and the scam is exactly the same. The secret anatomy. 1. The segmentation. The name match scammers use bots to scrape social media and public directories. If your last name is Johnson, they use a script to automatically insert Arthur Johnson into the email. It feels personal, but it is automated. 2. The deal. The co-conspirator noticed that Sterling didn't just say, "Here is your money." He said, "Let's partner up and trick the bank." By making you a partner in a slightly shady, but seemingly victimless, scheme, they ensure you won't talk to the police or your family. You are now complicit. 3. The documents. The reason the documents look so real is that they are templates. They use real death certificates and just Photoshop the names. 4. The drip feed. They never ask for $50,000 upfront. They start small. Legal fees. Then taxes. Then bribes. They bleed you slowly so you don't panic until it is too late. How to expose the legacy trap. The copy-paste test. This is your strongest weapon. If you receive a long, elaborate email from a stranger, copy the first 2 sentences and paste them into Google in quotation marks. You will almost certainly find a forum where people are discussing the exact same email. The barrister check. Real lawyers have bar registrations. In the UK, you can check the Solicitors Regulation Authority, SRA, website. If Charles Sterling isn't there, or if the email address doesn't match the official firm's domain, e.g., using at gmail.com or at consultant.com instead of at sterlinglaw.com, it is a scam. The logic of law. Lawyers do not email random strangers about multimillion-dollar inheritances. That is not how probate works. They hire forensic genealogists to find the exact lineage. If they have to ask you if you are related, they aren't real lawyers. The dream of a surprise inheritance is powerful. It appeals to our desire to be saved, to be special. But in the real world, fortunes are not left to strangers via email. If you get a letter saying a long-lost relative left you millions, the only thing they actually left you is a chance to lose your own savings. Thank you for listening to True Scam Stories. Don't forget to like and subscribe.